Hello and welcome to the RealTime Fantasy Sports Show. I'm Jeff Paur, senior writer with RealTime Fantasy Sports, joined once again by Logan Glaser, contributing writer here at RealTime Fantasy Sports. Logan, thanks for coming on the show.
Yep. As always, thanks for having me on.
Logan, it's week 14, if you can believe that. That means it's either, in most leagues, it's the last week of the regular season or the second last week if you have four spots. Some leagues are actually in the playoffs, but either way, it's it's the end of the road for a lot of teams, I think. So it's a big week of games.
Yep, for sure. It's kind of that make or break week to either get into the playoffs, pushing for that bye in the playoffs if you have six teams. In TFC leagues, the playoffs do start this week for individual leagues. So that's exciting to keep in mind. Only two teams on a bye. So shaping up to be a good week.
Yeah, the only two teams on a bye this week, Commanders and Cardinals. So not two really high profile teams with a lot of great players that you're going to bench. James Conner, I guess, could be missed after his big game last week,
Yeah,
but for the
James
most
Conner, and
part,
then you got Brian Robinson,
yeah,
who kind of dealt with an injury at the end of the last week, but that's
he's
about it.
banged
You got
up.
Sam Howell maybe
Yeah,
playing
Miles
in
played pretty well. Yep, it's true.
but
Kyler Murray's kind of been hit or miss. I mean, he's been fine. His floor's fine. He's getting around 20 points every game, but he hasn't done anything outstanding
yeah,
just yet.
if you had him, you probably have someone else on your team that you started for the first 10 weeks. So,
You're right. Exactly. So, as always, for this waiver wire story video we do every week, we're going to give you three players that we like in a streaming defense. And we kind of mentioned this before we came on here, Logan. A lot of injuries again this past week, unfortunately. A lot of QBs went down, some running backs, some receivers too, especially last night with Christian Kirk. So, a lot of
yeah,
openings
lots of
happening.
injuries all over the place, places for people to step up. And as you mentioned, especially that QB position, when you look at some of these matchups this week, it is brutal at the QB slate, especially starting off with Thursday night football this week, Patriots, Steelers. You got Bailey Zappi versus Mitch Trubisky. It's looking like over under on that game is 30 points. So
Oh, is it really 30 points?
yeah,
I'm not picking either of those QBs. Please don't.
yeah, not either.
That's going to be an awful game. Who's going to watch that one? Oh, that
Yeah,
Pittsburgh's got a
if,
following, but
yeah. If you
wow.
have people in fantasy, that's the only way I think you're watching that, or if you're from one of those areas.
Yeah, exactly. Holy cow. Hopefully, the rest of the games are better than that one this the rest of the week. But like you said, lots of options out there this week. I felt like I read a column as well. You can read that on RT Sports, and it has a lot more players than this, but it's the deepest it's been in a long time for me. So I think there's more options out there, and I think there's some decent ones. So why don't you start it off? Give me your first waiver wire ad, Logan.
Yeah, first one I'm going to go with is Jake Browning, Cincinnati quarterback, 28% owned. So he's only played in two full games, but he's looked great in those two games. First game he went 19 for 26, and then last night against Jacksonville he went 32 for 37, 354 yards, a passing touchdown, a rushing touchdown. He had 30 fantasy points, and he has a great upcoming schedule as well. He's got the Colts this week, and then Minnesota the following week. So I love his matchups. Both games will be at home with that. So he's proven himself in the first two games, and he's got two great matchups. So I think you can count on him for about 20 fantasy points or more in those matchups.
I think you have to give that coaching staff a ton of credit. They've done a great job tailoring that offense to his strengths. I think they did
Yeah,
tremendous last
they
week.
sure have.
You have to wonder at some point, will it catch up with him as teams scout him more? But you're right, though. Next two games are great. And I'm proud to say I put Browning on my sleeper list last week, Logan. He was one of my
There
guys.
you go.
I
He
started
proved
him
it.
in a, I
He
started
proved
him
it
in a
this
league.
week.
I actually started him in a league because Lamar Jackson was off, and I played him, and pretty happy
Yeah.
with the way that turned
He'll
out.
gladly take those 30 fantasy points.
Yeah, exactly. All right, my first pickup's a guy you actually mentioned here recently on the show, and that's Jonathan Mingo. He's still just 17.7% owned on our site, so out there in a lot of leagues. He had a season high 10 targets last week. He has 10 catches for 129 yards his last two games. Adam Thielen's really going downhill in a hurry. I don't know if it's just age, wear and tear, but he's done nothing the last two games. Mingo's getting his chances. I don't like that passing game, but somebody has to catch balls, and Thielen did good early in the season, was a helpful, productive fantasy receiver. So why not Mingo? I think he could be a big factor the rest of the way. So he's one of my favorite pickups for this week.
Yeah.
All right, Logan, who's another one of your ads?
Yeah, next one I'm going to be looking at Zay Jones. So there's a lot of questions around Christian Kirk's injury about how long he's going to be out. If he does miss this week, though, I love Zay Jones to step up into the wide receiver two role. Calvin Ridley, everyone probably thought he was going to go off after Kirk got injured, but he was held silent last night with that. Zay Jones had 5 receptions, 78 yards. He had 8 targets. Another question mark is going to be Trevor Lawrence's injury, but CJ Beathard played well in return for Lawrence. He went 9 for 10 with 63 yards. So I don't think there isn't too much concern there. Obviously, it hurts Jones's value, but I think if Kirk misses, Zay Jones has a great ceiling there.
So I think that injury did not look good last night. It looked like it could be something long term, unfortunately, when he went down. And
Yes,
that
for sure.
that's why I am picking the other Jags receiver that stepped up when Zay Jones got hurt. So I would favor Jones over Parker Washington, but I think Parker Washington's worth looking at too. He's a
Yeah.
rookie. He's done next to nothing because he's been out all year because of injury, but he got his chance last night. He looked good, scored a tremendous touchdown catch. I don't know if you saw that,
Yep,
but
I saw that.
it was
That was
unbelievable. He caught 6 passes for 61 yards. I think he's a good fit for that slot role with them, kind of a small receiver, speed guy. And if they have a backup playing too, I feel like a lot of those tight ends and slot receivers get more looks. So Washington could be worth a look. He's owned in less than 1% of leagues on our site, 0.3. So kudos to those 0.3 for actually having him on the roster. I don't know
yeah,
who saw that come. He didn't have a
absolutely.
catch all year. So came out of nowhere. I doubt he was started, but either way, I think Washington's worth a speculative ad, at least if you're looking for some receiver help going forward.
Yep.
All right, Logan, who's your last pickup for the week?
Yeah, last pickup is going to be Elijah Moore. He's 50% owned, so available in half the leagues. Last week, he had 12 targets versus the Rams. Most of those came when Amari Cooper was out dealing with a concussion. So we're still waiting to see exactly if Cooper will miss this week. But he looked good with Joe Flacco. It was kind of his go-to receiver with that. He only did have 4 receptions out of those 12 targets. He managed 83 yards out of that 12 fantasy points. And he's got a great upcoming schedule against Jacksonville, Chicago, and Houston. So 3 good weeks. So if Amari Cooper does miss time, I think Elijah Moore is a must start in most of the leagues
Yeah, I
this week.
definitely would have put more on my list if you didn't have him, Logan. I like him a lot with Joe Flacco, too. I think Flacco's a big upgrade at QB for them. He'll take chances, push the ball down the field. He's not afraid. It feels like every time it's third and something or whatever, he just launches the ball down the field, Flacco. He
Yeah,
doesn't
it's
care.
great for fantasy. If
It
you have
is.
wide receivers, it's great because yeah.
So my last pickup's the only running back that makes a list for us, and it's actually a guy that's not even playing this week, and it's Chris Rodriguez of the Washington Commanders. This is more of a speculative pickup for the playoffs. So Brian Robinson went down with a hamstring injury. We don't know how long he's going to miss, but he could definitely miss some time, especially with them playing for little at this point. And Rodriguez has played well with his chances in this offense, and I don't think they're just going to turn the ball over to Antonio Gibson. I think they're going to continue to use him in his usual change of pace role, more as a third down back, pass catching back. So I think Rodriguez could be the guy, gets the early down work like Robinson did. And he produced really well when he was healthy and playing in the Washington offense. I mean, he's a top 10 fantasy back right now. I don't know if people realize that. So
Yeah.
if Rodriguez steps into that role, I think he could help in the playoffs. So he could end up being one of those guys that, is a sneaky help for league winners this year. So I think he's a good pickup, just owned in 4% of leagues. Obviously, you're not going to use them this week because they're off, but I like it more as a playoff type move going forward.
Yeah, I like that call, especially with them being off this week. I think you can get them for cheaper with your
Yep,
fab money.
exactly. If you have the roster space, go ahead, go for it. All right, Logan, let's talk about a streaming defense. So just 2 teams off, a lot of options out there for the streaming way to go if you want to do that defensively. Who do you like as that pickup?
Yeah, I basically went and just looked at who the Jets were playing and selected Houston as my defense
All
this
you got
week.
to do.
So I'm going to go with Houston as my defense this week, playing the Jets. Houston defense actually has been playing pretty good, though. 7 interceptions in their last 4 games. They've been playing electric football, picked off Russell Wilson 3 times in that second half, including to win the game. Falcons had 13 fantasy points against the Jets offense last week. And Falcons have been one of the worst fantasy defenses so far this year. So I really like Houston. As a lot of uncertainty about who will be starting for the Jets this week. Seems like it might be Trevor Simeon. I heard reports they want Zach Wilson back in there, but Wilson's hesitant to take back over that starting QB role because he doesn't like how he was benched. So we will see what happens there.
I was going to mention that it's craziness. He doesn't want to go back in the starting line.
Yeah.
That's when you know it's bad. Holy cow.
Yep.
Unreal. My defense is another one that I never thought I'd suggest, but I'm looking at them this week because of who they're playing, and it's the Panthers. They're just 5.7% owned. They're playing the Saints. I think Jameis Winston's going to start. Carr is really banged up at this point, and Winston, he's a turnover machine. I mean, he'll just launch the ball uh, to anyone at any time, and I like it from a fantasy perspective, but man, he's going to turn the ball over. He's going to get sacked. So I think the Panthers could have a decent game this week. They scored 6 points against the Saints earlier this season in week 2 as well from a defensive perspective. So that's not terrible. They had 4 sacks and an interception in that game against the Saints in week 2. So I think the Panthers could be a decent pickup. They're widely available. Also, they've played better lately, less than 20 points allowed 3 of 6 games. So if that offense can actually do some stuff and stay on the field a little bit and give that defensive break, I think they could be a good play in this matchup against Jameis Winston, the turnover machine in New Orleans. All right, Logan, that's our waiver wire ads for week 14. Thanks, as always, for joining me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Good luck to everybody out there navigating those waiver wires this week. Should be a great week of action. Hope you win all those games in week 14 and have a lot of success on the waiver wire. This has been Jeff Paur with RealTime Fantasy Sports. Have a great day.